by a judge in order before they could be transferred to adult court. And then since then, there was another change in the law where they prevented transferring at all kids 14 and 15-year-old. And now what the law stands are kids who are 16 and 17 are only the ones subject to transfer. You add to that, this beginning of this year, there was another change to the law, which was passed by changing the criteria in which the judge would review transfer or evaluate a transfer case, and then that the ultimate factor is the amenability to rehabilitation. I think many of you were in that trial and heard the evidence that was in that transfer case, and that was kind of the bottom line is what we have. The district attorney now, they have the burden to show by clear and convincing evidence, which is kind of, we have the highest level of evidence is clear beyond a reasonable doubt, and then the one step below that is clear and convincing evidence. So it's still pretty high evidence, and they have to overcome that standard by showing that the youth is not amenable to treatment in juvenile court, which is, we believe, is a high standard to overcome. So that's kind of where that's kind of been the effort that we've been doing on the legislative front. I've been engaged in these efforts, and in particular also up until 2021, when a judge transferred a youth to adult court, that decision was not subject to a review and appeal. So I co-led a legislation, which is AB 624, and it created a right to appeal of any transfer decision. So now, even if we have a judge transfer a kid to adult court, and up until 2021, that decision was only subject to a writ review, which in many cases were not subject to review on the merits. So now, with the change in the law, if there is a transfer, that decision is subject to appellate review on its merit in every single case that there's transfer. Now, having said that, I think while we truly and tremendously support the effort that you and a few of my friends over on the JJDPC had been pursuing, we really have to focus on what the law is, what the state of the law is. So all of our training is dedicating as these are the tools we have today. How can we maximize it? How can we work with what we have today to make sure that none of our clients are being transferred? So that's kind of where we are, and we continue to work on the legislative level to strengthen the transfer law, and hopefully at some point in time it'll become a prohibitive practice in our state.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Becca, for that question. Perhaps for other members of our DFA who maybe have not heard some of this background, let me just make a comment that I was able to join Nancy and Becca, and I think Bill was there at that meeting as well, when we met with the DA, and none of us believes that someone who committed a crime should they should still be accountable for that crime, whatever it is, right? And should be appropriately accountable. But we were, Becca and Nancy know more about this than I do, but it was reported to us that when youth go into an adult prison, they are often put into solitary confinement to keep them safe. Well, you're keeping them safe on one hand, but you're slowly making them lose their minds on the other hand. And so they're not safe. And the point was made to us because of our passion that the DA made the comment that, well, we have to look at public safety. And so our response was that what about the public safety? What about the safety of the public once this young person who's been completely traumatized and ruined leaves prison eventually? Because that's a person that I don't want back in my community. And so we were advocating for appropriate justice, right? For considering the age. And it is true that some of these young people have committed horrible you know, like the traffic accident, right? I mean, that was stupid, but I don't know my own son if I'm lucky that that didn't happen to him, right? And so we can all, those of us who have young people in our lives, know that just by the grace of God, our child was not involved in something serious like that. So we do have passion around this. And so perhaps you can talk to us a little bit about what we might do in order to be better advocates for this point of view. Is it possible for our San Mateo County to have um, a, um, an advanced kind of rehabilitation program that would be appropriate for young people who have committed these crimes? Sorry to go on so long.
That's perfectly okay. So just to uh, kind of reconfirm what you just, I mean, that's why we focus our efforts on amenability and rehabilitation and then the adolescent brain development. I mean, when we transfer a case, we find a transfer of a case, we work with experts who are expert on brain development. We also work with experts who understand what it takes, and then also to opine on the amenability of the youth, and then also what are the programs needed in order to rehabilitate the youth. So we tackle it in 3 different ways. That's kind of what our focus usually is. And while there are other factors the court has to concern, given the change in the law, this is kind of like what we call the super factor right now. In the old days, the gravity of the crime was always kind of hard to overcome, no matter how well the kid is doing and how well they have been rehabilitating while the case is pending. It did not matter, because they would look at, like, if it's a murder case or whatever the nature of the charge, typically those are serious charges, that we could not come over that factor. Under the new law now, the judge is actually looking at the youth and the youth's need and what it's going to take to rehabilitate the youth, rather than just the offense by itself. So that's kind of been a big change and as you saw the outcome from this case, that's where the court focuses decision on, is the fact that in the next number of years that the court is gonna have this youth under its jurisdiction, the youth is gonna be amenable to treatment as shown by the expert testimony presented at the hearing. So that's kind of to answer your question, how we balance between the crime itself and then the youth. And I think that's where the new law helps us in that factor. As far as advocating, I think you have to use the science. I think that's kind of the big thing. You have to use the experts, whether it's Dr. Ron Managawa or Dr. Kaufman at University of or Irvine, UC Irvine. Both of these are leading experts in the state on adolescent behavior, and I think those are really the points that go home, because then you're taking away the emotional aspect involved in the actual cases, and you're talking more about science. Let me tell you one thing, like, it's a little bit different about from transfer cases, but something we use quite a bit. We use in our daily practices, we fight detention hearings, and it reflects in the numbers of youth at the hall, because one of the approaches we have been engaging in the last 3 or 4 years to advocate and then to litigate very aggressively at detention hearings. And then what we have done is we collected all the science behind the traumatic effects of detentions and detaining youth, and then we present that at detention hearing, and then we argue to the court that there's no good purpose comes from incarcerating youth. It doesn't work as a timeout. That's not, the science does not support that. We work with our social workers and investigators to come up with alternative release plans that we put forth when we argue. And so we argue the science. We also give alternatives to the court to help us kind of release kids on home detention or electronic monitoring, or the different programs that are available in our community. But that's kind of one approach. And I think that same approach, when you're using the science, will go a long way in helping and trying to advocate on the transfer here and the transfer cases.
Oops, sorry about that. Thank you so much. I'll mute myself. Thank you others for muting yourselves.
We'll go ahead with questions, and Marshall, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. You know, with regard to the answer about using the science, which of course needs to be primary, but of course prosecutors are also trying to use the severity of the crime to do either transfers or harsher punishments. So my question has to do with whether there is a maximum amount of time that a juvenile can actually be incarcerated, and if that has an influence on both the prosecutors and the public, because if juveniles can't be kept, you know, in a murder case for more than just a small amount of time, that would influence people. So my question is there a need to have more flexibility in how juveniles can be treated depending on how serious the crimes are, and related to that, is there a maximum is there some maximum age that you would consider a cutoff for someone not to be transferred under any circumstances?
Yeah, so let me answer your question this way. The maximum age right now the court can keep a youth in under its jurisdiction is 25. And the reason for that number came up just based on the science and the brain development. All the indication shows that by the age 25, our brains are fully developed by that point. So that's kind of where that line came up. I think as to the second part of it, to your question, is right now where the law is, youth that are 15 and younger are not subject to transfer. So we're looking at 16 and 17-year-old who are subject to transfer petitions. I don't know if I answer your questions, but.
Yeah, but is there some age at which nobody should ever be transferred? And well, how can we work on that issue?
Yeah, I mean, we're our position, no kid should be transferred. I mean, they should be always treated as adults. That's but that's not what the law is right now. And that's what I'm saying, to advocate for complete change in the law to to do away with the option of transfer. I think that's where you have to use the science to show that their amenability to treatment. And I think that's where it would be helpful to kind of go about it that way.
Thanks. All right, Elsa, you got the next
I'm
question.
sorry, one more thing. And rehabilitate, a robust rehabilitation plan that is available for treatment of the youth while they're in secure track or in secure facilities.
All right, Elsa, you got the next one.
Thank you so much. I have one question, a quick comment though. Interestingly, somebody said, Diana, in asking her question, said, we know something about it was awful or stupid of the guy who ended up driving too fast and killing the parents of those two young children. They were also given, they're being charged with with murder, not with manslaughter. And apparently, because it wasn't purposeful on their part to, I'm going to go kill someone tonight, that they could be charged with manslaughter, and that most white people always do get a charge of manslaughter. They're being charged with murder, and guess what? They're Latino. And that apparently has been up, down, and sideways, the point. I mean, one of the issues there. My question for you, though, is how do we get programs into the youth prisons, and I will call them prisons, so that the DA doesn't have this excuse anymore, or the judge doesn't either, but particularly the DA doesn't have the excuse of saying, oh, but there aren't good rehabilitation programs in the youth prisons. That's what we who have met with the DA keep hearing. Oh, but there are better programs in the adult jails than there are, and none of these exist in the youth prisons. Well, to me, that's a matter of, okay, let's go put $1 million into it and let's make sure it happens. And I've been told many times that Santa Clara has excellent programs for that. How do we wipe out that excuse to allow youth to stay in youth court and in youth situations?
So the good thing is with the change in the law beginning January of this year, what the DA was banking on is not the law anymore. That argument does not work anymore because the focus shifted about, the nature of the crime and what rehabilitation plans are available into whether the youth is amenable or not. That's one. And the second part is we train, and what we argue for is what we call individual rehabilitation plan. So we focus on, by doing our assessment, working with different experts from social workers to psychiatrists to people to talking to the families, we try to figure out what exactly the youth needs. And then what we have been trying to do and we've been doing is when we create that individual rehabilitation plan, we have a hearing on it. And then we put forth the programs that our client needs. And then we ask the court that if those programs are not being offered, that the court orders those programs for our clients so those services are provided. Now, that's kind of one way of what we've been dealing with it. Then there's the bigger picture, which is systemic change by bringing more and more providers into the juvenile hall to provide the those services. And then, but one of the aspects, and that's why the law provides that there has to be an individual rehabilitation plan because each youth is situated a little bit differently and they might need a little bit different service. It might be more mental health work, or, it really depends what the underlying issues that the youth was dealing with. So that plan would reflect that. So each kid is going to have something unique to them. And that's one of the flexibilities in the law, is to kind of work with the court, work with probation to kind of come up with that plan and then on the back end of it, try to bring those services to the youth. Now, I have to tell you, is a few months ago, the judge, the district attorney, the deputy in charge, and also somebody from probation and me went down to Santa Clara. We looked at their secure track. We talked we spent an afternoon down there learning all about their programmings and all the things that they offer to their secure track. We were pretty impressed. But I have to say also, when in our latest hearing, we had one of the expert also look at some of the programmings that we are offering. And then, we do offer some good things here. We're not perfect. We still lag behind Santa Clara and other counties, but at the same time, I don't, look at that and to prevent me from asking what we actually need when we have a youth that have an individual rehabilitation plan that calls for specific programming. And we intend to litigate those issues and ask the court to order.
But the court hasn't been ordering them. Why hasn't it happened before this? Because the DA months ago, not before January, said to us, but these programs don't exist except in the adult jail. You have to send whomever this is to the adult jail. It was this calendar year, I promise, that the DA said that. Yeah,
I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, but I haven't done adult cases in 4 years now, and I'm pretty confident, and I've deferred to Lisa on that. But we still have a lot more programs in juvenile court or juvenile hall than they would have in adult court. But Lisa, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
But maybe we need to know that so that when we visit him, we can say, wait a minute, what about X, Y, and Z? Lisa, sorry.
No, I think you're right, Elsa. I think it's a question of calling Steve out on his answer and making him provide specifics, or coming to him with specifics. What about this program? What about that program? What about, the fact they can do this? What about the fact we can bring in that? is much more familiar with the adult jail. And so he's probably thinking of some of the programs. And honestly, the programming in the adult jail right now is not great. It's not great at all. And so I think if you went to him armed with accurate information, you'd be able to very easily come back to him with information that proves that that's just ridiculous to say they should be in the adult jail.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Is that the kind of information we could get from you?
Sure.
A
I
list
mean,
of
we
what's
can,
available?
yeah, Ron and I together, we could come up with a list of what's available in
Great.
the adult jail. Ron can come up with the list of what's available through the juvenile system, and we could provide that to you. I have no doubt that you'd be well prepared to come back with a response to that claim.
And also, just on that point,
Outstanding.
in the hearing that we had, and I could share that because that was a public hearing, the expert that we put on the stand had reviewed our secure track treatment plan that has been put in place here, and then told Judge Arazadi that he feels confident that the youth who, if it kept in juvenile court under the juvenile court jurisdiction, is going to have sufficient services for the rehabilitation plan. So we're more than happy to provide you with that list that, you know, and you
Have you ever seen that work in getting somebody to agree to keep the person in youth court instead of sending them to adult court?
We just did.
Ah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's go
Thank
on.
you.
Bill, you've got the next question.
I want to go back a little bit on what Marshall was touching on and ask a little different question. And this can be for either Mr. Reyes or Ms. McGuire. There was a film that came out, a pretty significant film called When Kids Get Life. And what that talked about was the situations where kids get moved into the adult prisons and they're subject to life in prison. So in answer to Marshall's question, you know, technically, if you want to get technical about it, some kids get life in prison and never get parole, whereas adults who go into adult prison have been subject to parole. So we have that issue and that problem. So the answer to Marshall's question is, in fact, you can have life in prison as a juvenile if you're transferred into the adult system. Secondly, I would like to know what you guys know about people on the other end of the system. That is, when and if they ever do get released, how they transition back into the community and what kind of support they need. And maybe you can comment on what the services are that you know that effectively help, and what are the services that are not there right now that we need to put in place. And the last part of my question, I just want to cite the Central Park 5, because that's probably one of the best illustrations I can think of where not youth, in this case non-white youth, were accused of a crime that they didn't commit, and they all were sent to prison for many years, and then later on through judicial actions or presidential actions, it was realized that, hey, we made a mistake, and this needs to be corrected. So I guess the other concern I have is for those youths who go in for long periods of time and end up serving time in adult situations where they don't really get good treatment, or they're in solitary confinement. What do we do to try to provide some social justice here so that doesn't happen in the future as much as it has in the past? Thank you. And Mr. Reyes or Ms. McGuire, if you're there,
Yeah.
Whatever your thoughts are, I would really like to know, because that's my concern. Thank you.
Well, there's a lot to unpack really in your questions and observations. There was a comment in the chat I just want to acknowledge that Becca correctly points out that there is a difference when we're talking about jail versus prison. So my comments with regard to Mr. Wagstaff refers to the county jail. And so if he's talking to you in his conversations about state prison, that is a different comparison. So the information we would be able to get you would be about the county jail. If you want more information about services in prison, we don't have that as handy, but I can still try to get that for you. So just to acknowledge that comment and make that clarification. With regard to some of what Bill is referencing, the fact that I think what you're referring to is that there are youth that are being convicted and sentenced to sentences that aren't eligible for the same relief as some of the like 18 to 25-year-olds under the youthful offender parole. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about.
Well, that's what's been documented in the film that I referenced.
Okay, because that is an issue that has been identified and I think is being addressed legislatively. I think there are efforts to try and correct that inequity, that in fact you would have a better opportunity to get some relief through the penal code if you're 18 and older, and I think it's between 18 and 25. You're getting the relief under the youthful offender parole that you wouldn't get under the conviction. And Ron, if you have anything to add here, you obviously are the better expert in juvenile matters, but I do know that that is an inequity that exists that they're working on trying to address. And so I would say stay tuned for that there is a recognition that that is unfair. With regard to services that are available, I'm not sure if you're talking about for youth that, you know, have spent their entire sentence, so they're coming out 20 years later. I think that is a question that really goes to parole and what services parole is providing. Sadly, you know, a lot of the people who went in as youth and come out as, you know, middle-aged men or even, you know, elder men, that they're put on parole, and I would imagine there's not a lot of support provided to them through that system. But again, I would ask Ron to jump in and add if he has additional information in that regard.
So regarding some relief for those youth who were convicted as adults, there was a recent case, I think People versus Heard, that gave given some relief to certain class of people. As Lisa said, there's also the legislative effort to kind of address that class of kids. So, and all in all, there is effort to try to address this inequity that we see in right now. As far as, you know, I can address what youth who have spent time in juvenile hall are being released. They're usually a re-entry plan that we work with probation in order to kind of ease the youth back into the community, to integrate them back in the community. And then so one of the ways would be to address their housing needs, you know, what vocational training they have done and they need. You know, there's different aspects of it that you know, that the re-entry plan would address to work with the youth. And there are, you know, and you know, we have not had too many youth here long term in a while. And then the last one we had to have a hearing, and then when we had the hearing about it, it was pretty clear that there's different services that probation could offer those youth, and then they did offer after when we requested a hearing, and then we asked them to come forward and then explain to us what their plan is, from housing to different other services that we're able to provide to that particular youth I'm talking about. So there are some services that they put together, part of that reentry plan. The thing we have here right now, we only have one youth on secure track. We anticipate we're going to have more than that in the next few months here, but then it's pretty new to us. And then we're still trying to learn. And then the one youth that we just today been appointed to represent that youth, he was represented by private counsel, so we were not part of the proceedings. So we don't know exactly what kind of plan was put together. We'll be looking at that pretty closely and then adjusting that plan based on the youth's need as we go forward. But those are the things that we take into consideration when a youth is close to a reentry. And then, to be honest with you, for us as defense attorney, no matter what the crime is, no matter what happened, we always think in reentry from the minute we meet our clients. That's kind of the basic thing that we try to do. We always focus on reentry. What are we going to do to help our client in their reentry?
Thanks. All right, I get to have the next question. And I want to go back to something that Lisa talked about last month, and that was early representation. And I wanted to know from the juvenile division, is that something that you guys are you able to get in with the youth early so that you're helping to make sure that they're not getting overcharged, that they're having representation as early in the process as possible?
Yes, we do. We actually been doing that for a while. And one of the things that started in 2018 was the passage of 625.5, which is that 625.6, excuse me. And that's the Miranda consultation. And what the law provides that prior to any custodial interrogation, a youth must consult with an attorney before giving any statement, and that consultation cannot be waived. So any youth, whether arrested and going to be interrogated, we get notified. We have attorneys on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they take the call. We meet with the client, we talk to them, we understand what's going on. And then we also use that opportunity to collect very important information, whether do they have an IEP at school? What's their immigration status? Do they have a dependency case? We try to collect a lot of information. And then we also talk to the cop to understand why were they arrested, what's the nature of the charges they've been arrested on, and if they're planning to detain the youth or they're gonna cite and release. So we gather all that information, and depending on what the nature of that case, I get that what we call an intake form, and then I right away then start working on assigning an attorney to that case. Now, some of the more serious cases, we typically have a social worker right away assigned so she can start establishing a relationship with the client to start working on different plans that we need, trying to understand the dynamic of the youth, the different things that we can to put forward when we come to a detention hearing or a Dennis H hearing. So these are the things we do. We also talk to the youth to figure out what their education situation, like, for example, is an incident happened at school? Is there some kind of disciplinary hearing happen? Because their timeline is very different from our timeline. One of the challenges we face is when we have a youth that have an incident at school and they get arrested, but they cited and released, that case does not get filed for, usually, if they do file it, for 3 weeks or so. By that time, they already had their expulsion hearing, and then before we even met the youth. So these some of the things that we try to capture when we meet, when we get the call and collect that information at the outset. And to answer your questions, we are allowed. We go talk to the kids in the hall, usually within, right after they get arrested. We collect all that information and then start preparing for the detention hearing that should happen usually within 48 hours from when they were detained.
Oh, that's tremendous news, because Now, adults don't get that, but I'm thrilled to hear that the kids do. That's
Unleash, I'll let you tell what you usually hear about our Miranda call from the DA's office.
Do it.
No, I'm saying how you get the complaints about how effective our Miranda calls. You know.
Oh, yeah. It is funny, Susie, because the efforts that I'm making to make that happen in adult, Steve Wagstaff's response to me has been, oh, next thing you know, we're going to have to deal with the same situation you've got going on up in juvenile. So he views it as a very bad thing that, you know, these youth are being advised, and he, God forbid we have that happen down in adult court. So yeah, the fact that law passed was incredibly fortuitous and helpful and makes perfect sense. And what makes even more sense is to expand it and require that just be the law. But the DA's office will fight us tooth and nail on that.
well,
Yeah,
that's something for us to work on, though, for sure.
Yeah, when the law was amended in beginning of January 2021, initially when the initial amendment was to include up to age 25, but there was such a strong pushback, they had to cut it back to 17 and younger. So
yes, Steve actually even tried to get the county to deny us funding to pay for that service. And what he had said at the time is, well, your lawyers are just going to tell them not to talk. So, you know, why would we do that? So, you know, he's very, very opposed to providing people with that protection. And it's unfortunate.
And that's not a big surprise to this crowd. All right, next up for question is Johanna.
Thank you so much. So a couple of things I wanted to touch on. Susie, you just mentioned about what's available to the kids to prevent overcharging. You know, our public-private defender's office does an excellent job, but I can tell you there is nothing that will stop Steve Wagstaff from overcharging our children. It just happens. Historically in San Mateo County, we charge much differently than our surrounding counties. For example, a child and his friend, or young person and their friend, go into Walgreens and they steal some hygiene products. They do that in San Francisco, they get maybe petty theft, right? Here they'll get a conspiracy charge because two individuals talked about going into Walgreens to steal hygiene products. So please don't underestimate the importance of when you check your ballot on who you want your district attorney to be. Our district attorney, in my opinion, is not, his values and his views are not in line with the way that the majority of residents, you know, view these types of issues. The other thing,
so we need more than one person that we can vote for, and there's never competition.
Exactly.
Hint, hint, everybody. Thank you, Johanna.
Another thing I want to point out, I'm on the Juvenile Justice Commission for the county, and one of the things we do is inspections every year. We used to inspect holding stations and police stations, but now with the new Miranda laws, right, we are not doing that because kids are not being taken to police stations to be interrogated anymore. And in my opinion, that's a beautiful thing. So that's just what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Marshall, you've got the next question.
Yeah, this has been incredibly informative. Thank you. There's obviously a lot to work on, and we're, I guess you would call, an activist club. And so I'm wondering what both you, Lisa, and you, Ron, consider the a difficult issue other than getting a new DA. What issues in the private defender's purview needs a lot of help from the community and people like us to work on?
Well, I'll just take a stab at it. And I think it's been well established. I'm not the expert in juvenile, but I think that what I'm hearing is if the emphasis is on what services are available to youth to help them to rehabilitate, and the issue is there aren't enough services, then I would think an activist group's efforts would be well spent advocating for the county to spend money to develop more programs that will provide that rehabilitation, so that that is no longer an excuse. I mean, this county has a lot of money, and you could make efforts in being influential as to where that money gets spent. And if more money is spent by the county to create programs, and pressure is put on probation to spend part of their budget to create programs, then they'll no longer have the excuse that we don't have adequate programming to rehabilitate these children, therefore we're going to send them to prison. So that would just be my suggestion.
All right.
And then I
Thanks.
can give you, I'm sorry, I can give
Go
you
ahead.
some of the specific things that, just to kind of follow up what Lisa's saying. For example, it would be great if we have a short-term residential treatment program that is available for youth in the juvenile justice system. We don't have that in the county. For example, if you have a youth that get in a fight with a parent or some incident at home, and then that's the only kind of threat to public safety is an incident that happened at home. Under what we have today is youth getting arrested because the parent does not want them to be at home. They come and they get booked in juvenile hall. Because we don't have an alternative, that youth stays in juvenile hall, even though everybody involved knows that that youth, besides that incident at home, does not create a public safety. But we don't have a placement for them, and to place them. Like, there's no relative, there's no other family members that want to take them or available to take them. So this is an issue we're really, I mean, there's places like Rebecca's Children's Services, there's the Bill Wilson Center, both of these they have in Santa Clara. There's no reason, as Lisa had just said, we are pretty well-resourced county. There's no reason why we shouldn't have some program like that to offer to those small population that we serve. Another thing is we really could use domestic violence treatment program that is geared towards juvenile rather than adults. You know, we would like to see increased access for college classes for our youth. We're gonna, with having youth in secure track, we're gonna have them for a longer term. We need to have full-fledged 4-year degree for them available, because they, you know, we're gonna see kids being here for, you know, 5 or 6 years or more. Residential treatment, drug treatment program is another thing. And then also one thing that we can could use your help on quite a bit is improve the food at the hall. I mean, this is an issue we've been dealing with for a number of years now, and it's still, you know, not that good at all. I mean, that part of rehabilitation is having a good solid meal for youth, and then when you serve them with soggy food that no one wants to eat, that's just terrible. I mean, we should not be dealing with this. I've spent a lot of time dealing with this issue here locally, and then I have been recently, as recent as last week, during the regulations with the BSCC on changing Title 15 to try to do away with the requirements they have right now on restriction of the if you have 50 or less children in a secure facility, you do not have to have an on-site kitchen. So we're trying to do away with some of these restrictions so the youth can have the ability to have good food and good, you know, nourishment, so they don't go hungry because they don't want to eat the food that's been brought, you know, at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then they're going to eat it for dinner at 4 o'clock. That's just not acceptable.
Good point, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say out also to Ron is that our club has passed 2 resolutions. The first was against the charging of youth as adults, and the second one was the Johanna's the juvenile justice talking about their review and including the quality of the food and being culturally acceptable, that, you know, that's an important thing. I'm going to go ahead and go on to Nancy. You got the next question.
Thanks, Susie. And I will say, because our club passes 2 resolutions, we brought them forward to the Democratic Party and they passed them both as well. They insisted on passing them as urgency measures because they didn't want to wait a month to vote for them. But this is so helpful, and especially what you just outlined about the details of some of the programs we need. I have a question kind of left over in my mind from the chat. If it was more specific, if a kid is transferred to adult court and then convicted, what factors determine whether they end up serving their sentence in the county jail or serving their sentence at state prison? I know laws have changed. Thanks.
Well, typically that if a youth is transferred, there's certain crimes or offenses, I should say, they're qualified to be eligible for transfer. And then if there is transfer, usually those offenses are of a degree that they would end up serving their sentence in state prison. And one of the things I wanted to point out too, in the past when DJJ was open, if a youth was convicted as an adult for a period of time, they would bring him to a DJJ, and then they transfer him from there to state prison. And then now with the closure of DJJ, I don't know exactly what the practice would be. Luckily, we have not seen the numbers of transfer have dropped drastically this year. We don't know exactly what they're doing with our population, but I'm assuming they will be direct transferred to state prison. I don't know if they have specific yards for them or not, but I can't imagine it will be, anything that is good.
Thank you. Unfortunately, thanks.
All right.
And thanks for all you're doing.
And Elsa, you're up next.
Sorry, this is a new for me as I'm looking for it. I think it's great to pass resolutions. I think we need to do the same full court press in front of the board and at board meetings and one-to-one with board members before we get to those board meetings to outline, here are the awful things that are happening. How can you help us champion changing them? How can you help get the money into the budget that is going to pay for enough teachers, enough programs, that excuse is wiped away, even whether or not it's on the books or not. But so that there is increasingly less and less reason to ever need to go outside youth, whatever it is, for any of these people. And I remember someone saying, and you alluded to it earlier, that one of the reasons some maybe judicial people don't want a murder case to stay in the youth court is because they can only be held for 7 years. Your point about up to age 25, Ron. And I just wonder if there's anything, well, I'll go down a rabbit hole now, but anything to do with that, whether people could say, actually, never mind, I think it's a rabbit hole, sorry. But we need to work with you. We need to have you helping us know what issues to bring when. And I think, Johanna, your list already of what's wrong in the Juvenile Justice Hall is a great list to start with. And we need to have the board say, yep, here's the money. I don't care what time of year it is. I don't care what budget has already been allocated. They need to do this yesterday. They do it for mental health today, notice, as we bring those issues before them. We need to do it yesterday. How do we work with you, I guess?
I do think we have a receptive board of supervisors currently. And I feel that this is sort of a golden opportunity with our board of supervisors to make contact with Supervisor Corzo, make contact with Supervisor Canepa. My impression is that Slocum is tending to lean towards Corzo and Canepa's views on things as well. I think Pine is very fair. And so I think it really is a golden opportunity now, and the makeup of that board will change soon. And we don't know what you're going to end up with. I don't know enough about all the candidates, but it is possible you could end up with some more conservative voices on that board. So I think there's no time like the present to reach out to the supervisors, seek a meeting, express your concerns, and ask them what they can do. Ask them what they have the authority to do. I think Corso in particular would be very she would be very much in favor of taking action, you know, that improved the situation up at juvenile.
Agreed. Is it wise for us to try to bring you to any of those meetings, or is that a bad idea?
I know
As if
Ron
you
and I
have time
have
on the
both
phone.
met with Supervisor Corso separately. She met with Ron to discuss mostly all juvenile issues, and then I met with her really talking about more adult issues. But I think that any way in which we can help, we are happy to do that. We would be, you know, more than willing to go with you, or we could meet with you in advance and sort of narrow down the focus of the issues to, you know, what are sort of the most pressing and most practical things to focus on, whatever you prefer.
It sounds like a great idea to have the full list, which again, the Juvenile Justice Commission has done a great job of, and to take it to the supervisors and say, so here's the list. Do they cluster in certain ways? Can we do the whole list at once? How do we take it forward? How do you champion this for us? And if we found 3 champions among them, we need to have done this a long time ago, I think, though, too.
And I think getting to them not in a meeting, but in advance, you know, try to set up a meeting in the office, go in
one-to-one.
And really flesh it out so that nobody feels on the spot, nobody's making, you know, rash decisions. They have an opportunity to go in and then try to get it on an agenda when they, you know, are prepared and maybe have been primed to go your way, and then try to get it in front of them publicly.
And have them help get it on the agenda. I think that's terrific. No, I completely agree. You do the one-on-one first, and you find out where they are, but you also you realize where your champions are, but they educate you too about what will work or the best path forward to make it all happen. So guys, I think one of our next steps is, maybe this should come out of the Social Justice Task Force, Gail and Diana. That I think it's a hell of a worthy and good and doable, given our current board, Lisa, thank you so much, project that we can take on between the end of now and the end of the year.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I want to let Ron, did you want to add anything more in that? And then I've got a last question for you guys.
Oh, no,
Okay, great. So this was a question that actually came up in the chat earlier. And it was asking about, can you tell us what are the 3 biggest differences between the private defender's office like yours and the traditional public defender's office? And it's particularly regarding juveniles.
So I worked for a long time in Santa Clara County. I was a court-appointed attorney on the independent defender's office down there, and I worked pretty closely with the public defender's office. So I have a really good idea of how a public defender's office operates. I wanted to let you know, as far as the quality of representation that we provide here, I'm not sure you're going to find any difference. I take a lot of pride and challenge anybody who can say we actually, and the public defender can provide better service than us, because we're on the edge of everything. I know I'm engaged in the law that changes what's happening in the law. I feed it to my attorneys as soon as it comes out. Before it becomes the law, we already know what's happening. And so we were a pretty cohesive group. We put on lots of training each year, between the in-house training that we do that is juvenile specific, and plus the work, the collaboration I do with the Pacific Juvenile Defender Center, the Office of State Public Defender, and then as well as California Public Defenders Association on their juvenile training. We offer about 30 hours of training at no cost to any of our attorneys. That's available to us. So so from whether it's training, whether the one-on-one that I work with all of our attorneys, well, keep in mind we are very small, so I get the opportunity to work with them closely. I'm in court every day. I get to see their work. I provide feedback. I strategize cases with them. So we do lots of lots of collaboration and brainstorming and things of that nature. I think the big difference for us, really, what I view it is, it really not on the client front, but on the back front. For example, our attorneys don't have, benefits. They don't, they're independent contractors, and then where we don't supervise them as an employer because there are independent contractors, but we have put in law quality control in places to kind of check on the work, whether it's, when we have a case, I'm looking at it, for example, a murder case, and I'm seeing an attorney not doing any work on that case, that triggers lots of red flags for me. So I'll talk to that attorney. Luckily, none of that stuff happening because we hand select the attorneys that handle those cases. But we usually, there's law quality control that we put in place to kind of gauge the quality of representation that we provide to our clients. So from a client point of view, I don't think you're seeing any difference. We pride ourselves on the high quality representation we provide. We provide it from like I said, from the minute the youth comes into contact with the justice system through our consultation. And I have to tell you one thing also. I was asked last year to go speak to a panel out in Illinois to kind of talk to them about the success of our Miranda calls and how effective our been. And that's one of the advantages we have because we pay our attorneys to be on call and to handle those calls versus public defenders when they have it just, they trade phones and they may get a day off in exchange or something like that. So it does not work as effective, but we do have a really robust, effective Miranda call. That's just from at the front end, and that really trickles down to everything else that we do. It prepares how, we know exactly what kind of youth we have coming into the hall, so we can figure out if it's a serious case. I'll start getting on the phone to line up the attorneys who we have designated, and let me just take a minute to let you know a little bit about our panel. Our panel divided in three different categories. We have the attorneys who handle transfer cases, and those are very select attorneys. And the reason for that is we want our attorneys who handle transfer cases, if God forbid there is a transfer, to stay with the youth and handle the case in adult court. So they are, not only they have to be the best of the best on the juvenile side, but they have to be the best of the best on the adult side because they're doing the most serious cases. So we have that, specific attorneys, they handle that. Then we have another level of case attorneys who handle cases who are not subject to transfer, like there are offenses listed in the Welfare Institution Code 707P. And those are serious cases. So we have very capable juvenile attorneys who've been doing it for a long time. They have the background to handle those kind of cases, but those are cases that there's no risk of them transferring to adult court. And then we also have, the low level felonies and misdemeanors, and there's different type of attorneys that we assign those specific cases to. So we kind of divided exactly, we mirror exactly what a public defender does with those kind of cases. And then each case that comes in, I review it, and then I determine what qualifications, what type of attorney it needs. And then I try to match up the case with the attorney that would fit his skills or her skills fit that particular case.
Thank you. Lisa, did you want to add any to that?
No, I think that's quite comprehensive. I would just say, I think some of the biggest differences really are, that, for instance, we have 115 lawyers. And if we were a public defender's office, we would probably have almost half that. So we would have, you know, half the number of attorneys handling the same number of cases. Also, with regard to our budget for experts and our budget for investigations and social workers, it's more generous because of the fact that we are saving quite a bit of money not paying the benefits and the retirement and the overhead for all of these attorneys. And it's really the attorneys that take the hit financially, in the sense that, you know, they're agreeing to work without that salary and without that overhead and the retirement and the healthcare and all of that. But you know, they're doing it hopefully because they love the work, and they're making decent money, and they're, you know, able to take on a private case here and there that helps them with regard to their overhead, and they work together to share office space and all of that. But I would say that the savings we have because of that allows us to be pretty generous with regard to hiring doctors and other experts that are really important to do good work on the cases.
All right. Well, that is a marvelous place to end tonight. And I am so thankful that you were both able to come tonight, because this kind of filled in. I think we got a lot of the questions answered that we never got to last month, and especially the focus on what's going on with juveniles. I really appreciate you both coming. I think it's been I think I speak for the whole team here that it's been really good. And I think we've got a couple things to add to our own agendas, work for us to do. And we're a group that likes that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. All right.
Thank you so
Have a good night.
Excellent.
Good night.
All right.
Right.
Well, that was marvelous. And I am so glad that we were able to have that second conversation and be able to really focus on youth. And the best
Thank
thing
you for thinking to do that 2 in a row, Susie. You get 100% of that credit. Thank you.
You know, it was, and I think that the thing I really loved hearing about was the early representation. I'm absolutely thrilled that the kids have that from you know, the minute they're arrested, they're not waiting to talk to an attorney. That is so important. And now we just need to expand that to adults. And that's something to put onto our agenda. Okay. Next up, I was going to ask Nancy, would you like to talk about the sheriff's oversight? And I'm not going to say fixin', because I want you to introduce the new coalition name.
Thank you so much. And yes, moving to the need for independent civilian oversight of the sheriff, not taking away from the need for our next job is going to be independent oversight of the district attorney and the probation department. I mean, really, we've got some work to do here. But with regard to the sheriff, so the county, most of us know, has a subcommittee of supervisors Pine and Slocum, and they've been around working for almost a year now on community outreach, planning a study session, trying to look at models of oversight. We've checked in with all 5 supervisors over the last couple of weeks, and they all remain supportive of oversight. So that's the good news. The bad news is a couple of things. Right now, the board subcommittee is doing some outreach in the community, but they're not asking about oversight. They contracted with a group from Stanford, but they're basically asking people what they feel about the sheriff and the sheriff programs and what kind of services should the sheriff provide. So it's a little bit more of a popularity contest. And the staff have said to us in meetings that at the study session, they want to bring back that document and that research and other research and see whether there's really a need for oversight. And we said in response, Elsa actually said in response, what? That's really different. You guys voted for oversight last year. So the other kind of odd quirk is that they have told us on numerous occasions that Fix in San Mateo County is just one voice. And so that's why they want to hear from other people. They've heard from Fixin about the need for oversight. Now they want to hear from others in the community about how they like the sheriff. These are 2 orthogonal concepts, the need for oversight and the popularity of the sheriff. So what we as a coalition are doing is a couple of things. There's 33 organizations, political clubs, including DFA and the Democratic Party and Stonewall Dems, Latinx Dems, Coastside Dems, PDC, who am I missing? Many of the political clubs have endorsed oversight, endorsed Fixin. They're listed on our website, along with faith groups and groups like the ACLU, statewide as well as local. So we've got 33 groups now that have voted internally, including us, to endorse oversight and endorse Fixin San Mateo County. There's also 5 cities and the North Fair Oaks Council that have voted at their city council meeting or their North Fair Oaks Community Council meeting to endorse oversight and have sent a letter to the board supporting the efforts of Fixin. And those cities are East Palo Alto, Half Moon Bay, Redwood City, Portola Valley, and San Mateo, representing a third of the people who live in the county. So we were kind of concerned to hear that Fixin is just one voice. And in response, we pulled together all the 33 groups and we said, well, what should we call ourselves? And we're calling ourselves the Coalition for a Safer San Mateo County. And this is a week of action. We're right in the middle of it. And I'll post some links in the chat how you can get involved. The next board meeting is September 12th. And so this week we're doing a call-in every day to a different supervisor. Very positive messaging. We just call and say, you know, I'm Nancy Goodman from DFA, and thank you for your leadership and oversight. We hope you get it done by the end of the year. It's really, really important. Just so they can tally a bunch of positive responses, thanking them. We've called Canepa on Tuesday, Corzo today, tomorrow is Mueller, then Dave Pine, and on Monday is Slocum. And I'll post a link to how you can get the talking points and stuff. Then that brings us to the Tuesday board meeting. We are going to have a downtown rally at the Hall of Justice Plaza at 8:30 a.m. And several people in this room are going to be raging grannies and perform. Thank you, Gail, for writing some songs. Thank you, Marshall, Diana. Elsa is not, and I'm trying to remember who else. They will lead off this press conference and rally at 8:30. We're going to send a press release out about this tomorrow. And then we're going to have Mayor Lisa Espinosa Garnica of Redwood City welcome us to Redwood City. And then Jim Lawrence, thank them for being there on behalf of Fixin, which is one of the members of the coalition. And then South San Francisco City Council, James Coleman, talking about the importance of oversight, and then a prayer from the Peninsula Solidarity Cohort. At which point the time will be over and we're all going to walk in to the board chambers and give public comment. Again, very positive public comment. And this is not an item on the agenda. So the public comment will probably be around 9:10, 9:15. So if you can show up at the Hall of Justice at 8:30, you get to be part of the rally and go on, and since you're already there, walk on in and make public comment, or just show up and make public comment by Zoom, which is okay too. We're having a little poster party on Sunday afternoon at 2 at the Unitarian Church in Redwood City and serving ice cream, and that'll just be fun to make some posters for that. The reason we're doing it is we're really trying to call out that we're a coalition. So when people are calling in this week and when they speak to the public comment, they're not going to say, I'm supporting Fixin. They're not going to mention Fixin San Mateo County at all. They're going to say, I'm from DFA or ACLU or the Woodside United Methodist Church, and I support oversight, and they're going to be positive. Thank you for voting for it last year. We really want it to happen. We want to find out what you're doing, and we want you to pass a strong civilian oversight by the end of the year. A little bit more detail than that, but it's pretty short. The reason we're not complaining about the things we could complain about, which is that they have not spoken publicly on this topic since last November. Other counties are having listening sessions, other counties are having public work groups and different kinds of ad hoc subcommittee meetings in public. And they haven't done a website that other counties have done. Marin and Alameda both have nice little websites for their oversight effort. Alameda has a public safety subcommittee that meets regularly in public. We're not complaining about that. We could, but we're not. And I'll tell you why in a minute. The second thing we're not complaining about is that they were so lame that they spent $60,000 hiring the Gardner Center at Stanford to do community outreach. And it says about oversight. It says it in the title of the contract, but we got the contract. There's not a single word about oversight except in the title of the contract. It's all about, like I said before, it's what do you think of the sheriff? Do you feel safe with it in law enforcement? Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? What kind of programs and services should the sheriff offer? How could we help the sheriff be more transparent? So there's no way that anyone's going to volunteer oversight. However, we do happen to know that in at least 3 meetings that they had with county commission staff, somebody in each meeting, 3 separate meetings, 3 separate people spoke up and said, wait, why aren't you asking us about oversight? We really need oversight. And one of those people was a county staff who has nothing to do with fixing San Mateo County. So you may wonder why we're not calling them on the carpet for that. There's 2 reasons. One is that we think it's not really the supervisors. We want to talk to them about that in private meetings. We think that's coming from the county executive office. And the other reason, which is just as important, is on September 12th, we have come to understand that the Millbrae housing, permanent supportive housing conversion of the La Quinta Inn is going to be considered. And they're really beat up about that, especially Dave Pine. And even though that'll be later in the day, they're going to be paranoid. They've been the kind of, one of the supervisors said it's going to be a fight or flight response. If you say stuff, anything negative, they're just going to tune out and they're going to panic. And my husband said, well, why do you worry about that? I mean, just who cares what they think?
Exactly.
And the reason we worry, the reason we worry about that is we want their vote. And if we scare them off, we won't get their vote. So our message in public is positive. And if you're going to speak, it's positive. But we also want people to sit down with their own supervisor and say, Supervisor Canepa, did you know they're not doing outreach about oversight? You know, Supervisor Corso, did you know? Because none of the supervisors know what's going on, including the ones on the subcommittee, we suspect. So we don't want to beat up the supervisors because we think they support oversight and they don't know what's going on. If 1 or 2 people want to comment that they wish there was more going on in terms of outreach and public, that's fine, but our talking points do not encourage that. And so we're really doing it because we don't want them to think that coalition is somebody that's on the attack. Right. This will not help us get 5 votes. And anybody in this room, Diana Reddy, who's been an elected official, has really confirmed with us that you don't do public shaming of elected officials. It backfires. They turn off. They don't want to hear from you again. So they love having their ego stroked. They're elected officials. So we say, thank you for your leadership. You're on the right side of history. Your support for oversight is the right side of history. Now is the time to get it done. We've got a good sheriff, benefits to the sheriff. Let's do it. So I'll post the links in the chat where you can just sign up to make those phone calls.
So Nancy, that was really informative, and you've answered actually partly my question about who's sticking their finger in the spoke here. And you say it's probably the county executive. I don't know why that person would do it, but somehow in the comments when we make our comments, it seems to me that we ought to be able to keep making the point that it has nothing to do with who the sheriff is at any given time. It's the point that the sheriff's office needs oversight. Regardless, the sheriff changes and from time to time, and so you have to have an active one. I mean, that's the issue. Has nothing to do with the popularity contest.
Just to add to Marshall a little bit, Marshall, the reason it's coming from county exec is Haligi has a history as a law enforcement officer believe he was chief in San Mateo. The other thing I want to say is when Nancy's talking about the rally, we plan to have comment cards available at the rally so that when you go in to make your comment, you can just submit your card rather than having to fill it out right there in the lobby, which takes up a lot more of your time and you don't get as good of access for speaking. So we're going to really try and coordinate that at the rally so people,
Good idea.
anybody who wants to speak, we can get that done. And when we go in, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Elsa, you got a question? Comment?
I do. Oh, sorry, I'm on. Yes. A big thing though is that because of all the behind the scenes, the one-to-ones we have been doing, which we very much encourage you to do, part of this, the commenting is going to be, thank you so much. Please talk to the public about it and let us know what's happened in the last 10 months since you have voted for this. We're so grateful that you are standing up oversight, because we did hear in a meeting with their staffs that, quote unquote, the trajectory has changed. We're not asking about oversight. We are taking the temperature. Oh no, sorry, the quote, we are finding out the lay of the land in the county, i.e., is there any problem that needs solving? So they're back 2 years. This is where we were 2 years ago. And that's regressive. We do know, we don't know how the county executive took it over, Mike Callaghy, but we do know that not a single one of those 5 supervisors realized that the questionnaire went out, had nothing to do with oversight. So we have now made that clear to all 5 of them. To make them into you the bad guys and talking nasty directly to them, as Nancy said, does put them on the other side of an enemy line, which we would be drawing and furthering into cement. Stupid idea. However, encouraging them by having every seat filled, everybody who can be there, and by talking online, if you can do a 1-minute comment online, they will hear this overwhelming rush of half their county is looking forward to their standing up oversight. And we need all 5 supervisors in that meeting to hear this with such decibels that they, because they're each asked to comment before they actually go into the agenda, that at least one, if not all 5 of them says, oh yeah, well, we are going to, let's make sure we comment on it in the next meeting or something like that. We just want to support them so they know those are their, so that they want to comment on it right then and there.
Okay.
And we do have, I think, 30 people signed up, mostly phoning, but and about 5 of them emailing every day. Canipa's voicemail box was full on Tuesday. Noelia's didn't get full today. She might be more organized with her answering. So yeah, okay. So our main thing is we don't want to do any public shaming. Let's just put it that way. Lashing out at them in anger and telling them they failed in their job is not going to win us any votes. And we want 5 votes.
Okay, Johanna, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to say that, it's timely that this is being mentioned now on the night that we talked about juvenile justice, because Paul and I work with kids who are aging out of the juvenile system and going into the county jail now. And we're finding that there's a considerable amount of problems. There's actually 4 cases that we're working on currently. So oversight is definitely necessary, specifically at the jail. And so I just wanted to make you aware that, so it's very timely. This is something that's needed. And hopefully, some of these things may be coming public soon, but it'd be nice to get ahead of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And hopefully I am working, so I won't be there, but I hope there will be a really good turnout.
We'll be happy if we can use your name on the letter that we're sending.
No, and I just haven't had a chance today. It's been one of those days.
Consider it done. Okay.
Yes. It's a what do you call that when it's just it's on the list?
Yeah. So for people to know, we have a statement of support, and we're asking each of our 33 groups to say they're supportive, and DFA of course is, and then we just want a name to go with it. So it'll say Susie Ray, San Mateo County Democracy for America.
Okay. And that transitions into our next topic. I talked a little bit as we were getting ready earlier that DFA, we are leading the San Carlos Art and Wine Voter Reg. We're working with the San Mateo County Democratic Party. We've already done a couple of voter reg events. And what I really want to mention is, we're not registering a ton of voters, but what's really been interesting is how many kids we've gotten. And that has been both at Burlingame and at Millbrae. It was the 16, 17, 18-year-olds that we kind of went, oh, yeah, you're right, I can register. And they were pretty interested about that. And if nothing else, they got the QR code to take home with them and look at when they weren't at a festival and didn't want to stop. So I am looking for volunteers for San Carlos. It's October 7th and 8th, Saturday and Sunday. I've already got a small group started, but the more people that we have, the easier it is. And even if, might even be less than a 2-hour period. So looking for volunteers, send your info to me. Just let me know if you're available on either of the days, and I'll be setting up a list, a sign up list official. We are list also too on the volunteering with this SMC Dems. So we're up on their website. Elsa and then Diana.
Thanks so much. I'd also just like to say that one of the things that struck us, and Susie and I are on the elections committee for the DCC, is that all of these locations, at least it strikes me, are in, excuse me, but kind of whitey territory where 80% of the people are registered to vote, surprise. So the more we can get our friends who live in East Palo Alto, some areas of Half Moon Bay, some areas of Redwood City, et cetera, South San Francisco, big deal. And James is going to help us there, but I had to connect them to James to get that to happen. It's just mind-blowing. We need to bring them other locations they can come to. And if it can be a fair, anything that has huge traffic is just fabulous. James Coleman says that there are tons of people in South San Francisco who need to be registered. Well, we know that's not true down here. It's just shocking. So please, we need to really think hard about where else can we be and who else could be the champion to open that door for us.
Well, and just to go with that, that's why, there's the connection's been made with James Coleman for South City. These are the things that we need somebody to bring that name into the elections committee. Or you can bring it to me, I'll bring it to the committee. And the same as Maurice Goodman in Millbrae is connecting us with the colleges. And he's got the connections there, plus possibly a few high schools. So these are really key demographics for us to bring in, because you're right. Art and wine is great. We might get a few people that, but you're not really getting the core community.
They have 16-year-olds at home.
Right.
Yeah.
Diana?
I'm so sorry. Almost everybody lives near or knows someone in a high school. So we could all bring in a high school, I bet.
Well, but you have to be connected to the people in charge. So it's not just knowing one of the kids, it's
but then the kids' parents and through PTAs, we could all try. That's all.
Yes. So Diana.
So I just wanted to make a point to your point about San Carlos, someone indicated that maybe it's not a good use of our time to be in a place where there aren't a lot of registrations. And I just wanted to report that the person who is organizing the San Carlos voter registration, for instance, was thrilled to hear that we were going to be there. And I just wanted to point out that for Democrats not to be there and for Republicans to be there is not a good plan. So it's always good for us to be there. Democrats need visibility. We are cheerful and we're a fun group as opposed to our counterparts. And we're able to talk to people, and we're able to get volunteers, and it's really important for us to be there, whether we are registering voters or not. And to the point about needing to be in more communities of color, I can personally attest to being at the North Fair Oaks Fair, where the vast majority of people responded to me that they can't vote because they are immigrants. And so we're going to have, we're not always going to have positive experiences, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be there. We still need to be there. And as Democrats, people who are immigrants are able to help with themselves, are able to help with voter registration. They're able to door knock for candidates that they like. There are always things that people can do, even if they're already registered to vote. So we don't need to focus just on that piece. And so I think, Susie, you know that I'm already on your list for St.
Oh, yeah.
Carlos, right? And
Well,
Ashley said that she can be on your list as
yep,
well.
I got her.
Okay.
And I've had Republicans come up and go, well, will you register me? I go, yes, I'll register any party. I'll register. We're just here to register voters, and we won't hold it against you. Though I will say that Bertha has a button that her puppy wears called Puppies Against Trump. And we've decided that we really need to make those because we could sell them for $1 and we could sell hundreds of them. And, it would be a real nice little easy money maker. All right, I am going to go on to task force reports, and I'm really going to start by, are there any task forces that really have a report for us this week?
We did not meet last month, so
Okay.
I don't have one for the elections.
Elsa, healthcare?
Can I just give that one sentence, I'll
Yep.
give, which is, so we've been going to the College of San Mateo Farmers Market, which has a zillion people for good reason, because it's so gorgeous and so yummy. Susie has come to help with CalCare, and all we're doing is handing out flyers and saying, here's what it is. Would you like to sign a petition so we can tell our legislators that we want them to pass it? Sorry. As Susie will attest, it's so many people stopped. So many people are positive about it. We got a lot of names. We've only done it for 1.5 times. We got 92 to 96 each time names. And today I got an email saying that we've won prizes. We were the second highest group in the whole state for the number of names and signatures that we brought in. Now that's incredible. If that was from 6 hours of work, that means every single one of us needs to be out there doing this. So I've got to say, the next time we're doing it on this date, I'm right now, but that we're doing it on this date, please come and help us. We can't begin to talk with every single person who goes by who is willing to talk with us. So the more we can do, if we could come in second in the state, that makes me sad, because it was easy. So we can clean up at the College of San Mateo. Come help us. Yep. That's my report.
Thanks. Okay. Diana, do you have anything you want to report from social justice?
It was mostly, no, I don't have anything except to say that we started our meeting. You may recall that, or maybe you don't know, it was the second Friday of the month. It was right after the horrible devastation in Maui. And we were all feeling really, low about that, upset about that. So I'm going to put into the chat the one of the groups that is an honorable group that we're recommending for donations if you're so inclined to support the victims of the Maui fires, because they still are in need of support. So that's the only thing. And then we went on to talk about the usual water and other issues that social justice people have to talk about. So
Good. Okay. And then Flavia, anything? Let's see. Is Flavia? There you are.
Yeah. So we did meet this month, and we are continuing discussions. refining positions on what we want to talk to our electeds about. I think it will be better served if our meeting with the electeds takes place in November rather than October, because we need a little bit more time to prepare. You know, I just want to share, Elsa, that in Oregon, there is a healthcare for all of Oregon movement afoot here. And we, you know, this past Labor Day, they, the local labor chapters of Southern Oregon held an event, and it was great. And the healthcare for all of Oregon was represented. You know, they were wearing their T-shirts, and you know, it doesn't take much for somebody to become passionate about something.
Yeah.
And the one gentleman that I talked to, you know, his wife died of cancer, and he doesn't want anybody to have to go through what he went through trying to get her the proper care. And so that, you know, I just want to, you know, shout out for what Elsa is trying to do, and to say that California is not alone.
And
But
California is doing so much better. The other thing Susie and I were shocked at was that I would say easily a third of the people walking by, instead of just trying hard not to look at you, would listen, and then they would start writing. They would start filling in their name and their contact info before you got to the end of your speech, because they said, yeah, I'm all for this. And they didn't always know the name CalCare, but they knew about this concept. They knew how outrageous it was not to have it in place already. So this is easy. We just need to get them signed up. Thank you, Flavia, again.
Yeah, and Oregon's, you guys are a step ahead because your state legislature's already passed something, haven't they? I think in the last month or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they held out that it was a priority, kind of like you know, public school funding is a priority. They held out that healthcare is a priority, and so it's kind of like laying the groundwork. So I think that's how the legislature has moved.
And I will say Washington's legislature, and signed by their fabulous governor, I wish he were, well, he's fabulous, sent to Washington their bill that passed that said, we want Medicare for all nationally. So both of those states together, our neighbors, it's time we joined our neighbors. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I think that's all on our task force reports. I actually would like to say, Marshall, we're meeting on Zoom because the COVID rates have gone up. Have you anything to share with us? Any do's or don'ts, or?
Yeah. You know, the general consensus is that it is going up, and the data say it is going up. It also says that because a large percentage of people have either been vaccinated or infected or both, that the rates, even though people are getting infected, the hospitalization rates, which are going up, are much lower than they had been. However, it's still a dangerous disease. Hundreds of people are still dying every day, you know, and it adds up to, you know, thousands of people, you know, a year are dying that are as high or higher than the flus that we've worried about. So it's still a dangerous thing. So the question is, do we want to have hybrid meetings so that people that are willing to come, masked, hopefully, because masking has been shown to be quite effective in reducing the chance of getting infected, you know, that then people can make a decision, because a lot of us are willing to risk, and a lot of us may not be, but a lot of us also want to see people in person. So I think, we might, depending, it is going up now, but we might want to think about, next month, if it's leveling off or going down, whether we want to have a hybrid. That's sort of how I'm reading the data. And that's what many of the epidemiologists and public health people are saying.
Marshall, do you happen to know when the new flu shots are coming up?
The new flu shots,
Which are combined
Vaccines.
with COVID.
No,
The vaccines.
you mean the new COVID?
Yes,
Well,
you know that's what he means.
Yeah, actually, the new COVIDs. I went to get a respiratory syncytial vaccine today, and she asked me while I was doing it, did I want the new sign up for the new COVID vaccine? Because it's going to be available, I think she said, like in the next week or two. This was at CVS, and I said, well, I had booster 2 recently, have to wait longer. So it's available. The new flu vaccine is available, and was asked if I wanted that today too. So the new flu vaccine is now available.
So you're saying that the flu vaccine is not combined with the COVID vaccine?
Oh, no, they're separate.
Are you sure?
Well, you can get them together. I mean, you can get them both at the same time, but it's not a combined vaccine to my knowledge. I hadn't heard that.
I got injected twice when I got my vaccine, one in each arm.
Yeah.
And Bill, where did you get
vaccine.
yours that you've already had?
Mine was at Kaiser.
Did you get
Okay.
the new
Yes,
COVID
yes.
vaccine?
Yeah.
It was
the
brand
new
new. You couldn't get much more new. It was
Yeah,
very fresh. And
Marshall, it's his 7th.
and it was
It's your 7th, Bill.
and what was cool was they were proactive about offering it. I didn't have to even go in and ask. I didn't even know it was available at the
Yeah.
time, and I got it.
But anyway, Greg, you can get them both at the same time, but they're not in the same vial. You get one in one arm and I guess one in the other.
I see. Okay, thank you.
All right, Flavia, and then Ashley.
Yeah, I just would like to say that a caution upon getting a COVID vaccine with another vaccine, like a shingles vaccine, really is a downer.
Yeah.
If you get a COVID vaccine at the same time, it is really going to lay you low. So that's my caution.
No, if you get I agree. The shingles vaccine will knock you off your ass for some people. It did me. And then in like 24 hours, it was like a light switch went off and I was fine. But yeah, you don't want to get that with anything else.
Ashley, you're up.
Yeah, I recently read that if you're getting the flu shot and the COVID shot, that it's a good idea to always get the COVID shot in the same arm as you had it the last time. I don't know why, but that's
They did a
the
study
medical
and
consensus.
sorry, Ashley. They did a study and it was almost 1,000 people and proved that the effectiveness of the COVID vaccine was significantly higher, more than more than 15 or 20% higher if you got it over time, always in the same arm.
Yeah, the reason is probably, the reason probably is because it goes to the local lymph node, and those lymph nodes are primed and will respond more vigorously. That's probably what's happening. Yes. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marshall.
Thank you, Dr. Marshall.
I was kind of wondering about this and going, yeah. And I got to get my pneumonia shot first because I kind of forgot that I postponed that one. I better do that one first.
That's good to get.
All right. Well, guys, 5 minutes early, but what a great Q&A with with the private
It was
defenders.
excellent. Yeah.
That was really excellent.
We have a social justice agenda Friday
I-
night.
Yeah. Well,
We
actually, I
got
think
That
things
is
to focus
so
on.
exciting. That's so
And-
exciting. And it's so exciting for us to have sort of in the end of the year where, you think, well, things are calming down or something. Oh, no, we can take this one on.
well, and
And
this is
happy birthday a few days ago to Marshall.
Again?
Happy
Happy birthday,
to
Marshall.
Yeah.
Happy
and
birthday
75, yes.
you. Yeah, and
Please,
happy birthday just
birthday.
before that to Ashley. Can we do a joint Ashley Marshall song? I think we need that.
Yeah, she had
Okay.
hers. She's up much older than me. Hers was a week before mine.
See, it's right here. So happy birthday
Birthday
to you.
Happy birthday to
both of
you.
you.
Happy
Cha-cha-cha,
birthday,
Marshall
dear
and
Marshall and
Marshall and
Ashley.
Ashley.
Happy birthday to you.
and
Cha-cha-cha.
many more.
That was
Wow,
terrible.
that was
Anybody else?
fabulous.
Anybody
Wait,
else
wait.
having a
We-
birthday?
wait,
Yeah,
wait.
we need to add another one.
You were all great. It's Zoom that's terrible translating it. That's
Oh,
true.
that was pretty exciting, actually.
Yeah.
Good,
And guys,
China.
I
It was
actually have to scoot because I got a bunch
Okay,
of phone calls
guys,
I have
it
to
was a
make.
good meeting.
Good
Good
night.
night,
Thanks for
everybody.
running a great,
Good
thanks for the
night.
great
Night all,
movies.
and
Great
Elsa,
meeting.
I hope you're up and around soon.
I
Thanks,
know,
Susie.
Elsa.
Me too.
Hang in there.
Oh, what a bummer.
Yeah, take care,